Admiral Lisa Carter had never seen the emergency council room so full of worried faces. Every important leader on Earth was there. Military commanders, scientists, and government officials all stared at the big screen showing the alien fleet. President Sam Johnson sat at the head of the table. His usually calm face looked very serious. "Admiral Carter, please explain the situation to everyone." Lisa stood up and pointed at the screen. 3 days ago, we received communications from an alien empire. They call themselves the Zephyrians. They have sent a massive fleet to conquer Earth. According to their own messages, they have successfully conquered almost 11,000 other worlds. Dr. Alex Turner added more information. The technology we're seeing is far beyond anything humans have ever built. Their ships appear to manipulate space itself for movement. We have no idea how their weapons work, but based on their confidence, they must be very powerful. General Patricia Young, the head of Earth's military forces, spoke up. "How much time do we have?" "The fleet will reach Earth in approximately 60 hours, Lisa replied. "But they may start attacking before they arrive. We don't know the range of their weapons." Ambassador Kate Sullivan raised her hand. "Has there been any attempt at communication? Maybe we can negotiate." Dr. Turner shook his head. "Their messages suggest they don't negotiate. They have a standard process for conquest. First, they demand surrender. If the species refuses, they attack until resistance ends." President Johnson looked around the room. "What are our options?" General Young opened a folder full of military reports. "Honestly, sir, our options are limited. We have 300 combat ships, various orbital defense platforms, and ground-based weapons. But if these aliens have conquered 11,000 worlds, they've probably faced much stronger enemies than us." Dr. Nina Walsh, the head of Earth's Secret Weapons Research, cleared her throat. "Mr. President, there are some classified projects that might help. We've been working on new types of nuclear weapons and experimental defense systems." "Explain," the president said. Dr. Walsh looked uncomfortable talking about secret projects in front of so many people. "We have developed nuclear warheads that create electromagnetic pulses much stronger than anything we've used before. We've also been testing kinetic weapons that fire metal rods at extremely high speeds." Admiral Carter thought about this. "The problem is, we don't know if any of our weapons will work against their technology. Their ships might have shields or defenses we can't understand." Suddenly, the room's communication system started beeping. Lieutenant Amy Rogers' voice came through the speakers from the Titan station. "Admiral Carter, we're receiving a new transmission from the alien fleet. This one is directed specifically at Earth." "Put it through," Admiral Carter ordered. The main screen changed to show a translation of the alien message. Everyone in the room read it silently, and the room became very quiet. "To the inhabitants of the third planet. You have been selected for incorporation into the Zephyrian Empire. Your species will benefit from our guidance and order. You have 72 of your time units to surrender unconditionally. Prepare your leaders for transfer to our command vessel. Resistance will result in the complete pacification of your world." President Johnson was the first to speak. 72 hours. They're giving us exactly the time it takes for their fleet to arrive." Ambassador Sullivan suggested, "We should at least try to talk to them. Maybe we can learn more about their intentions." Admiral Carter nodded. "I agree. We need to buy time and gather intelligence. Kate, I want you to lead a diplomatic contact mission." The neutral station Unity was chosen as the meeting place. Unity was a small research station that had been built by multiple Earth countries working together. It seemed like the right place for humanity's first official meeting with aliens. Kate Sullivan had been Earth's top diplomat for 15 years. She had solved conflicts between nations and helped create peace treaties. But she had never dealt with aliens who wanted to conquer her entire planet. The Zephyrian response came quickly. They would send one ship to the Unity Station. The meeting would happen in 24 hours. Kate spent that day preparing with Earth's best scientists and military advisors. Dr. Turner briefed her on everything they knew about Zephyrian technology. General Young explained what questions would help Earth's military planning. When the Zephyrian ship arrived at Unity Station, everyone watching was amazed. The alien vessel was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It looked like a massive crystal sculpture that somehow flew through space. Strange lights moved inside it like flowing water. Kate met the Zephyrian representative in Unity's main conference room. The alien looked nothing like humans had imagined. It was tall and thin, with skin that seemed to change color like a rainbow. Its eyes were completely black, and it moved in a way that seemed too smooth for any living thing. "I am Diplomatic Unit 7 of the Zephyrian Empire," the alien said through a translation device. Its voice sounded like music, but cold music without any feeling. "You may address me as Unit 7. Kate tried to stay calm even though her heart was beating fast. "I am Ambassador Kate Sullivan, representing the people of Earth. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." Unit 7 tilted its head in a way that seemed curious. "Your gratitude is unnecessary. This meeting serves only to formalize your surrender and ensure efficient transition to Imperial control." "We would like to understand more about your empire," Kate said. "Perhaps we can find a way for both our species to benefit without conflict." The alien's skin shifted to a darker color. "You misunderstand your situation. The Zephyrian Empire brings order to chaos. Your species displays all the signs of primitive disorder, individual decision-making, conflicting governments, inefficient resource distribution. We will correct these problems." Kate felt anger rising in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. "What you call disorder, we call freedom. Humans value the right to make their own choices. Freedom is inefficient," Unit 7 replied. "We have observed 10,847 species before yours. All believed their primitive ways were valuable. All were incorrect. After integration into the Empire, these species achieved productivity levels 340% higher than their previous chaotic states." "What happened to the species that refused to surrender?" Kate asked. Unit 7's skin became completely black. "Refusal is temporary. The Empire has never failed to achieve integration. Resistance extends the process but does not change the outcome." Kate leaned forward. "Let me be very clear. Humanity will not surrender our freedom. If you attack Earth, we will fight back." The alien seemed confused by this statement. "Your species possesses inferior technology. Your weapons are primitive. Your ships are slow and fragile. Resistance is mathematically impossible." Kate stood up from her chair. "Then you don't understand humans very well. We've been fighting wars for thousands of years. We don't always win, but we never stop trying." Unit 7 stood up as well. Its movements were perfectly smooth, like a machine. "Your final decision is resistance?" "Yes," Kate said firmly. "Earth's final answer is no. We will not surrender." The alien's skin shifted to bright red. "Integration will proceed as scheduled. Your species has chosen the path of maximum inefficiency. The Empire regrets this unnecessary waste of resources." Unit 7 walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back to Kate. "Curiosity What do you believe your resistance will accomplish? Kate smiled, even though she was terrified. You're about to find out. After the alien left, Kate immediately contacted Earth Command. Her message was simple and direct. Negotiation failed. They don't understand compromise or cooperation. They've never met a species like humans. Admiral, I recommend we show them exactly what human resistance looks like. President Johnson's response came an hour later. It was broadcast to every human on Earth and every ship in the fleet. Citizens of Earth, we face the greatest challenge in human history. An alien empire demands our surrender. They believe we are weak because our technology is simpler than theirs. They are wrong. We choose to fight for our freedom, our families, and our future. Let them come. Humanity has never surrendered, and we're not going to start now. The war for Earth was about to begin. Commander Jake Morrison rubbed his tired eyes as he stared at the screens in front of him. The Earth Defense Station Titan floated quietly in space, far beyond the moon. Jake had been watching the deep space monitors for 12 hours straight. Nothing ever happened out here. Most days he wondered why Earth even needed a defense station. Lieutenant Amy Rogers sat at the communication desk nearby. She was the best language expert on the station. Amy could speak 15 different Earth languages and could figure out new codes faster than anyone Jake had ever met. Right now, she was listening to the usual space noise through her headphones. "Commander," Amy said suddenly. Her voice sounded different, worried. Jake turned around in his chair. "What is it, Rogers?" Amy pulled off her headphones and looked at the data on her screen. "I'm picking up something strange. It's not like anything we've heard before." Jake walked over to Amy's station. The screen showed wave patterns that looked completely wrong. Normal space communication followed certain rules. This signal was different. It had patterns, but they were unlike anything humans had ever made. "Could it be from one of our deep space probes?" Jake asked. Amy shook her head. "No, sir. This is coming from outside our solar system, way outside. And, Commander, this isn't random noise. Someone is talking." Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. For 50 years, humans had been looking for signs of alien life. Scientists had built huge radio dishes and sent signals into space. They had found nothing. Now, something was finally talking back. "Can you figure out what they're saying?" Jake asked. "Give me time," Amy said. She started typing commands into her computer. "The signal is very complex. It's not like human language at all. But there are patterns. Repeating sections. If this is a language, I can break it down." Jake walked back to his command chair and picked up the secure phone. He needed to call Earth Command immediately. This was bigger than anything the defense station had ever handled. Admiral Lisa Carter answered on the second ring. "Morrison, this better be important. I was in a meeting with the President." "Admiral, we have a situation," Jake said. "Rogers has intercepted what appears to be alien communication." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Admiral Carter spoke very slowly. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Commander?" "Yes, ma'am. Lieutenant Rogers is our best communication expert. She says this is definitely artificial and coming from outside our solar system." "I want you to record everything," Admiral Carter said. "Don't transmit anything back. Don't acknowledge the signal in any way. I'm sending Dr. Alex Turner and a full analysis team to your station immediately." 3 days later, Dr. Turner arrived with his team of scientists. Jake watched them work around the clock trying to understand the alien signal. Amy barely slept as she fed new data into her translation programs. "It's a mathematical language," Amy explained to Jake on the 4th day. "They use base 16 counting instead of our base 10. Once I figured that out, the patterns started making sense. Dr. Turner looked excited but worried at the same time. "Commander, we need to show you something," he said. "Rogers has managed to translate part of the message." They gathered around Amy's main screen. She had written the translation in simple English words. Jake read it slowly and his heart started beating faster. Sector 7-741. Primitive species detected. Initiate standard pacification protocol. Estimated resistance negligible. Jake read it again. The words didn't change. "What does pacification protocol mean?" he asked. Dr. Turner's face was very serious. "Based on the context, we believe it means they plan to conquer us." Amy continued working on the translation. Over the next week, more pieces of the message became clear. The aliens called themselves the Zephyrian Empire. They had detected human radio signals and were sending a fleet to Earth. The message talked about bringing order to chaotic species and adding Earth to their collection of controlled worlds. Captain Ben Hayes arrived at the station in his reconnaissance ship, the Pathfinder. Jake knew Ben from their academy days. Ben was the best scout pilot in the Earth fleet. "I need you to take a look at the edge of our solar system," Jake told Ben. "These aliens might already be here." Ben launched his ship immediately. The Pathfinder was built for stealth and long-range observation. It could see things that the big defense stations couldn't detect. 2 days later, Ben's voice crackled over the communication system. He sounded scared, which was not like Ben at all. "Titan Station? This is Pathfinder. You need to see this." Main screen filled with an image that made everyone on the station stop talking. Ships, hundreds of them, but they didn't look like human ships at all. The alien vessels were enormous and seemed to be made of crystal. They reflected light in strange ways, making them hard to see clearly. Some were shaped like pyramids, others looked like giant flowers made of metal and glass. They moved through space without any visible engines. "How many are there?" Jake asked. Ben's voice was quiet. "I count over 300 vessels, Commander. The largest ones are bigger than our biggest space stations. And Jake, they're not stopping. They're heading straight for Earth." Dr. Turner studied the images on his portable computer. "These ships use technology we don't understand," he said. "Look at how they move. No rocket exhausts, no heat signatures. It's like they're bending space itself." Amy was still working on, translating more of the alien messages. Suddenly, she looked up with fear in her eyes. "Commander, I've translated another section. They're not just coming to conquer us. They've done this before. Many times." She put the new translation on the main screen. Jake read it and felt sick. Species conquest total: 10,047. Average resistance duration: 3.7 local time units. Longest resistance: 12.1 local time units. Expected completion time for Sector 7741, 2.1 local time units. Dr. Turner explained what this meant. They've conquered almost 11,000 different species. Most surrendered in less than 4 days. Even the strongest resistance only lasted about 12 days. Jake looked at the images of the alien fleet again. The ships were getting closer to Earth every hour. Soon they would be close enough to attack. "How long until they reach Earth?" Jake asked. Ben checked his instruments. "At their current speed, about 72 hours. Jake picked up the secure phone again. This time, he was calling the president directly. Humanity had 3 days to prepare for war against an enemy that had never lost a battle. The universe was about to learn what happened when someone threatened Earth. President Sam Johnson stood before the United Earth Council as representatives from every nation watched him on screens around the world. The weight of humanity's future rested on the decisions made in the next few hours. The Zephyrian Empire has given us an ultimatum, President Johnson said. Surrender or face destruction. I have called this emergency session to decide humanity's response. Representative Liu from the Asian Federation spoke first. Mr. President, we should consider the practical reality. If they have conquered 11,000 worlds, perhaps resistance is futile. Maybe we can negotiate better terms for surrender. General Patricia Young stepped forward. With respect, Representative Liu, these aliens don't negotiate. They conquer. Their own messages make it clear that resistance only changes how long the process takes, not the final outcome. Dr. Nina Walsh approached the podium with a tablet full of classified information. Mr. President, I need to brief the Council on our military capabilities. Some of this information has been classified, but given the circumstances, everyone needs to know what we're working with. President Johnson nodded. Proceed, Dr. Walsh. Dr. Walsh activated the main display screen. For the past 10 years, Earth's military research has focused on three main areas. First, advanced nuclear weapons that create massive electromagnetic pulses. Second, kinetic weapons that fire projectiles at incredible speeds. Third, defensive systems that we've never had to test against real enemies. Colonel Ryan Ford, Earth's top military strategist, added his analysis. The aliens expect us to fight like the other species they've conquered. But humans have been fighting wars against each other for thousands of years. We understand tactics, deception, and unconventional warfare. Representative Martinez from South America raised a concern. Colonel, what if our weapons simply don't work against their technology? What if their ships are too advanced for our attacks to have any effect? Engineer. Carlos Martinez, no relation to the representative, had been studying the alien ship recordings for days. I've been analyzing their vessel designs, he said. Their technology is definitely more advanced than ours, but it follows the same basic physical laws. Energy has to come from somewhere. Matter still has mass. If we can find the right approach, we can hurt them. Dr. Alex Turner presented his analysis of alien behavior. Based on their communications, the Zephyrians appear to be a highly organized society. They think in terms of efficiency and order. This might actually be a weakness. They probably expect enemies to fight in predictable, organized ways. President Johnson looked around the room. Dr. Turner, explain what you mean. Humans are chaotic. Compared to most advanced civilizations, Dr. Turner continued. We make individual decisions, we improvise, we change plans quickly. If the Zephyrians have only fought organized enemies before, they might not be prepared for human unpredictability. Lieutenant Dan Cooper, one of Earth's top weapons engineers, had been working around the clock on new military technologies. Mr. President, we've made some modifications to our nuclear arsenal. Instead of focusing on pure destructive power, we've created warheads designed to disrupt electronic systems and energy fields. Admiral Lisa Carter pulled up tactical displays showing Earth's defensive positions. We have orbital platforms around Earth, the Moon, and Mars. Our fleet consists of 300 combat vessels of various sizes. It's not much compared to their fleet, but we can use our knowledge of the local space environment to our advantage. Representative Chen from the European Union asked the question everyone was thinking. What are our realistic chances of victory? The room fell silent. Everyone looked at President Johnson, waiting for an answer. Honestly, President Johnson said, If we fight them the way they expect, we'll lose quickly. But if we fight them the way humans fight, with creativity and determination, we might surprise them. Captain Lucy Grant, commander of the stealth ship Vanguard, had just returned from a reconnaissance mission to the edge of the solar system. "Mr. President, I've observed their fleet operations. They move in perfect formations. Their communications appear to be highly coordinated. But I noticed something interesting." "What did you see, Captain?" Admiral Carter asked. "Their response times are too consistent," Captain Grant explained. "When one ship changes course, all nearby ships adjust their positions in exactly the same way at exactly the same time. It's like they're all connected somehow." Dr. Turner looked excited. "That could be extremely important. If they're using some kind of shared communication system, they might be vulnerable to the right kind of interference." Engineer Martinez had been studying the alien technology samples from their diplomatic ship. "I found something else interesting. Their ship's outer hull contains crystalline structures that seem to channel energy. If we could disrupt those structures, it might affect their entire vessel." Colonel Ford began outlining military strategy. "Here's what I propose. We don't try to match their technology directly. Instead, we use tactics they won't expect. Guerrilla warfare in space, hit-and-run attacks, psychological warfare. We make this fight as confusing and chaotic as possible." President Johnson stood up again. "Before we make any final decisions, I want to hear from everyone in this room. This choice affects every human being alive." Representative after representative spoke. Some argued for surrender, believing that resistance would only lead to humanity's destruction. Others argued that freedom was worth fighting for, regardless of the odds. Finally, President Johnson called for a vote. The question was simple. Would humanity surrender to the Zephyrian Empire or fight for independence? The vote was close, but the result was clear. Humanity would fight. President Johnson immediately activated the Global Defense Protocol. Every military base on Earth, every orbital platform, and every combat ship received the same message. Prepare for war. Enemy arrival in 48 hours. Fight with everything you have. Dr. Walsh and her research teams began rushing their experimental weapons into production. Lieutenant Cooper started modifying existing missiles with new electromagnetic warheads. Engineer Martinez worked with military factories to produce as many kinetic weapons as possible. Admiral Carter coordinated with fleet commanders around the solar system. The plan was to meet the alien fleet as far from Earth as possible, buying time for civilian evacuations and final preparations. Captain Grant volunteered for the most dangerous mission of all. The Vanguard would attempt to infiltrate the alien fleet and gather intelligence about their command structure and weaknesses. As reports came in from around the globe, President Johnson was amazed by humanity's response. People who had never agreed on anything were working together. Scientists shared research freely. Military commanders coordinated across national boundaries. Factory workers volunteered for extra shifts to build weapons and defenses. In the final hours before the alien arrival, President Johnson recorded a message that would be broadcast to every human settlement in the solar system. Citizens of Earth, Luna, Mars, and all our outposts, in a few hours, we will face an enemy unlike any we have ever encountered. They believe we are weak because our technology is simpler than theirs. They believe we will surrender because 11,000 other species have surrendered to them. They are about to learn that humans are different. We don't fight because we're sure we can win. We fight because some things are worth fighting for. Our freedom, our families, our right to choose our own destiny. Today, we stand together as one species, one people, one voice saying no to those who would enslave us. Let them come. Let them see what happens when someone threatens humanity. Let them learn that Earth doesn't surrender. Across the solar system, humans prepared for the most important battle in their species' history. The Zephyrian Empire was about to discover that conquering Earth would be unlike any of their previous victories. The countdown to war had begun. Fleet Admiral Zix Thanor stood in the command center of the Imperial flagship Eternal Order, reviewing the final intelligence reports on the species they were about to conquer. His crystalline form reflected the soft blue light of the control displays as his officers prepared for what should be a routine pacification operation. Science Officer Kyle Varen, present your analysis of the target species, Zix Thanor commanded, his voice carrying the harmonic resonance that marked his high rank in the Imperial hierarchy. Science Officer Kyle Varen's form shifted to the formal, reporting posture, skin patterns changing to display data streams directly on his surface. Fleet Admiral, the species designation human, presents a standard primitive civilization profile. They utilize chemical propulsion for space travel, kinetic and explosive weapons for warfare, and maintain fractured political structures across their homeworld. Estimated resistance capability? Zix Thanor asked. Minimal, Fleet Admiral. Their largest weapons appear to be fusion-based explosive devices. Their space vessels are constructed with basic metal alloys and lack any form of energy shielding. Maximum estimated engagement duration, 2.1 local time units. Tactical Officer Morthek added his assessment. Their fleet consists of approximately 300 vessels, none larger than our smallest escort ships. They have established defensive positions around their homeworld and nearby celestial bodies, following predictable orbital mechanics. Zix Thanor reviewed the tactical displays with satisfaction. In his 847 cycles of service to the Empire, he had overseen the pacification of 2,847 worlds. This engagement would be routine. Have they responded to our surrender demand? Yes, Fleet Admiral, Communications Officer Velnara reported. Their leadership has rejected Imperial integration. They have declared their intention to resist. This news didn't surprise Zix Thanor. Primitive species often chose the inefficient path of resistance before accepting Imperial order. Standard resistance psychology. They will submit once they witness Imperial superiority. Proceed with approach vector Alpha 7. The massive Zephyrian fleet moved through space with perfect coordination. Each ship maintained precise formation, their crystalline hulls reflecting and refracting starlight in patterns that had intimidated countless species across the galaxy. The sight of an Imperial fleet in full approach formation had caused most civilizations to surrender before the first shot was fired. But something was different about this species called humanity. Captain Lucy Grant's stealth ship Vanguard had managed to penetrate the outer edge of the Imperial formation. Using experimental cloaking technology that bent electromagnetic radiation around her ship, Lucy observed the alien fleet from impossibly close range. What she saw confirmed some of Earth's theories and revealed new concerns. The alien ships were even larger than long-range scans had suggested. The smallest vessels were the size of Earth's biggest space stations. The largest ships defied easy measurement, but Lucy also noticed something the aliens probably didn't want anyone to see. Their perfect formations weren't just for show. The ships seemed incapable of independent maneuvering. When one vessel adjusted course, entire sections of the fleet moved together in synchronized patterns. "This is Vanguard to Earth Command," Lucy transmitted on a narrow beam encrypted channel. "I'm inside their perimeter. These ships are definitely connected somehow. They move like they're all controlled by the same mind." Admiral Carter's voice crackled back through the communication system. "Understood, Vanguard. What's your assessment of their defensive capabilities?" Lucy studied the alien vessels through her ship's sensors. "Their hulls appear to be some kind of living crystal. I'm detecting energy patterns that suggest they can channel power throughout their entire structure. But, Admiral, I think I've found something important. Report. Their formations are too perfect. There's no variation, no individual ship movement. If they're all connected, then disrupting that connection might cause major problems for their coordination." Back on the Imperial flagship, Fleet Admiral Zixthanor was reviewing the species database for any relevant information about humans. The Empire maintained detailed records of every species they had encountered, cataloged by behavior patterns, technology levels, and resistance potential. "Curious," Science Officer Kyle Varon reported. "This species exhibits unusual characteristics for their technological level." "Explain." "Their radio transmissions show evidence of simultaneous conflicts across their homeworld. Multiple separate governments engage in regular warfare with each other. This level of internal conflict usually prevents species from achieving space travel capabilities." Zixthanor considered this information. Internal conflict indicates inefficient resource allocation and social instability. This should make them easier to conquer, not harder. "That was my analysis as well, Fleet Admiral. However, their recent communications suggest they have unified their conflicting factions specifically to resist Imperial integration. This was unusual behavior. Most species either surrendered immediately or fought as separate, uncoordinated factions. The Empire's standard pacification protocols were designed around these predictable response patterns. "Have they attempted any preemptive attacks?" Zixthanor asked. Tactical Officer Morthek checked his displays. "Negative, Fleet Admiral. They appear to be waiting for us to enter their defensive perimeter. Their ships are maintaining static positions around their homeworld." Zixthanor approved of this strategy. Defensive positioning was predictable and inefficient. The Empire could concentrate their superior firepower on fixed targets. "Maintain approach. Initiate pacification protocol upon reaching optimal firing range." But as the Imperial fleet drew closer to Earth, something unexpected began happening. Human ships started moving in ways that made no sense to Zephyrian tactical analysis. Instead of maintaining organized formations, individual human vessels broke away from their defensive positions and began moving on seemingly random courses. Some ships accelerated directly toward the Imperial fleet, while others moved in wide circles around the approaching alien forces. Fleet Admiral Tactical Officer Morthek reported with confusion, "The enemy vessels are abandoning their defensive positions. Their movement patterns do not follow any recognizable tactical doctrine." Zixthanor studied the tactical display. The human ships were indeed moving in chaotic patterns. Some appeared to be retreating, others were advancing, and several seemed to be moving in directions that served no strategic purpose. "Are they attempting to surrender?" Zixthanor asked. "Unknown, Fleet Admiral. Their communications remain focused on resistance declarations, but their ship movements suggest command structure breakdown." Science Officer Kyle Varon offered another analysis. "Perhaps their leaders have lost control of their military forces. Internal conflict may have resumed under stress." This seemed like the most logical explanation. The Empire had seen similar breakdowns in primitive species before. Faced with overwhelming imperial superiority, their fragile social structures often collapsed into chaos. Excellent, Zixthanor decided. Their disorganization will make pacification more efficient. All ships, advance to engagement range. Target their largest vessels first. But as the Imperial fleet moved into attack position, they encountered something no Zephyrian commander had ever faced before. The chaotic human ship movements weren't signs of breakdown or surrender. They were the opening moves in a type of warfare the Empire had never encountered. Captain Tony Blake, piloting his fighter squadron in one of those random movement patterns, was actually executing a carefully planned attack run that would bring his ships into the Imperial formation from an unexpected angle. Engineer Maya Torres, coordinating what looked like a retreating fleet section, was actually positioning her vessels to create a crossfire pattern that would catch the aliens between multiple attack vectors. Captain Steve Murphy, commanding submarines that had launched ballistic missiles from Earth's oceans, was adding a completely new dimension to space warfare that the Empire's tactical computers couldn't even categorize. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 10,847 species. By following the same successful strategy, overwhelming technological superiority combined with predictable tactical doctrine, they had never faced an enemy that fought with desperate creativity instead of military efficiency. Fleet Admiral Zixthanor was about to learn the difference between conquering civilized species and fighting humans. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and neither side was prepared for what was coming next. The first shots of the war came from the Imperial fleet. Massive beams of concentrated energy lanced out from the Zephyrian ships, striking the human defensive platforms orbiting Earth. The energy weapons cut through metal and rock like they were made of paper. Admiral Lisa Carter watched from Earth Command as 3 orbital defense stations disappeared in brilliant flashes of light. The alien weapons were exactly as powerful as Earth's scientists had feared. "Admiral, the enemy energy beams are completely penetrating our armor," reported Captain Jake Morrison from the Titan station. "Conventional defenses are ineffective, but Admiral Carter had expected this. All ships, execute Protocol Chaos. Repeat, execute Protocol Chaos." Across the human fleet, commanders who had been waiting for those words immediately abandoned traditional military tactics. Captain Tony Blake led his fighter squadron in the first wave of what the Zephyrians would later classify as tactically impossible maneuvers. Instead of maintaining safe distances and organized attack formations, Tony's fighters accelerated directly toward the massive alien ships at maximum speed. The Zephyrian defensive systems locked onto the approaching fighters and fired precisely calculated shots designed to destroy them efficiently. But Tony wasn't trying to survive. None of his pilots were. "Remember, people," Tony broadcast to his squadron, "we're not trying to win this engagement. We're trying to teach these aliens something new." The human fighters didn't try to dodge the alien fire. Instead, they continued their kamikaze runs straight into the Imperial ships' hulls. The explosions were relatively small compared to the massive alien vessels, but something unexpected happened. The crystalline hulls of the Zephyrian ships began flickering. The energy patterns that flowed through their living crystal structures were disrupted by the kinetic impacts. For the first time in Imperial history, enemy attacks were affecting ship systems not through superior firepower, but through sheer unpredictability. "Fleet Admiral," Science Officer Kyle Varon reported with confusion, "the enemy vessels are deliberately destroying themselves against our hulls. This behavior serves no tactical purpose." Fleet Admiral Zix Thanor studied the tactical displays. The human attacks were indeed pointless from a military efficiency standpoint. The small explosions couldn't seriously damage Imperial ships, but the disruption patterns in the fleet's energy systems were concerning. Are these attacks affecting our operational capability? Zixathanor asked. Minimal impact, Fleet Admiral. However, the hull resonance frequencies are being altered by the kinetic impacts. Some ships are reporting temporary power fluctuations. Before Zixathanor could respond to this information, the second wave of human attacks began. This time, it wasn't suicide runs by small fighters. Engineer Maya Torres had coordinated something the Empire's tactical computers couldn't classify. All missile platforms, fire everything, Maya commanded from her command ship. Don't aim for their ships, aim for the space around their ships. Thousands of nuclear missiles launched from hidden positions throughout the solar system, but instead of targeting the alien vessels directly, the missiles detonated in carefully calculated patterns around the Imperial fleet. The nuclear explosions created massive electromagnetic pulses that interfered with the energy fields connecting the Zephyrian ships. For the first time in their military history, Imperial vessels began losing formation coherence. Fleet Admiral, Tactical Officer Morthek reported with alarm. Fleet coordination matrix is experiencing interference. Several ships are reporting communication disruption with the collective. Zix Thanor's crystalline form shifted to a darker coloration, indicating stress. Restore communication immediately. The fleet must maintain formation unity. But while the Imperial forces tried to re-establish their coordination, the third wave of human attacks was already beginning. Captain Steve Murphy's submarines had been launching ballistic missiles from Earth's oceans for the past hour. Now those missiles were arriving at their targets. The ballistic missiles came from directions the Zephyrian fleet had never considered. Their defensive systems were designed to protect against attacks from space, not from the surface of a planet. The missiles struck several Imperial ships before the aliens could adjust their defensive matrices. Impossible, Science Officer Kyle Varon reported. The enemy is launching attacks from their homeworld's surface. No species has ever developed the capability to engage space targets from planetary locations. Zixathanor was beginning to understand that these humans were different from any enemy the Empire had faced. Modified defensive protocols to account for surface-launched projectiles. But by the time the Imperial fleet adjusted their defenses, the humans had already moved on to something new. Lieutenant Eric Davis, monitoring alien communications from his position on the moon, had discovered something important about the Zephyrian command structure. "Admiral Carter," Eric reported, "I've found their command frequency. They're using some kind of shared communication system. All their ships are connected through a single network." Admiral Carter saw the opportunity immediately. "Can you disrupt it?" "Better than that," Eric replied. "I can feed them information they're not expecting." Eric began broadcasting Earth's most aggressive music directly into the Zephyrian communication network. Heavy metal, death metal, and experimental noise music flooded the aliens' shared consciousness system. The effect on the Imperial fleet was immediate and catastrophic. The Zephyrians had evolved as a hive-mind species that valued harmony and order above all else. The chaotic, aggressive sounds of human music were like psychological warfare directed at their most basic nature. Fleet Admiral, Communications Officer Velnara reported in distress, "Our communication matrix is being contaminated with hostile audio patterns. The collective consciousness is experiencing severe disruption. Ships throughout the Imperial Fleet began breaking formation as individual commanders struggled to maintain mental coherence while connected to a network filled with screaming guitars and thunderous drums. But the humans weren't finished. Sergeant Lisa Brooks had been preparing for the possibility that alien forces might land on Earth's surface. When several Imperial ships descended through the atmosphere to establish ground control points, they met something they had never encountered before: human guerrilla warfare. The Zephyrian ground forces were equipped with advanced energy weapons and sophisticated armor. They expected to face organized military resistance that they could defeat through superior firepower and tactical efficiency. Instead, they found humans who fought like no species in the galaxy. Lisa's forces didn't engage the aliens in direct combat. Instead, they used hit-and-run tactics, improvised weapons, and psychological warfare. They attacked supply lines, disrupted communication equipment, and disappeared into urban environments that the aliens couldn't effectively patrol. "These beings fight without honor," reported Ground Commander Tolvex to the orbital fleet. "They refuse direct engagement. They attack from concealment and retreat before we can respond. Their tactics serve no logical military purpose." But the human tactics were serving a very specific purpose. Every minute the Imperial forces spent dealing with unpredictable ground resistance was a minute they weren't focusing on space combat. Lieutenant Dan Cooper had spent the time during the initial engagement preparing Earth's most desperate gambit. Working with teams of engineers and scientists, he had modified several large space stations to serve as kinetic weapons. "Admiral Carter," Dan reported, "Operation Sledgehammer is ready for execution." Admiral Carter looked at the tactical display, showing the Imperial fleet's current position. The aliens were still struggling with communication disruption and formation breakdown. This was Earth's best chance. "Execute Sledgehammer," Admiral Carter ordered. 3 massive space stations, their life support systems removed and their hulls reinforced with every piece of metal that could be welded in place, began accelerating toward the Imperial flagship. The stations weren't armed with weapons. They were weapons. The Zephyrian fleet detected the approaching stations and fired their energy weapons. The first station was destroyed completely. The second station broke apart under the alien fire, but continued forward as a cloud of debris, moving at tremendous speed. The third station, protected by the debris cloud from the second station, made it through the Imperial defensive fire and struck the flagship Eternal Order directly. The impact was catastrophic. The living crystal hull of the Imperial flagship cracked and shattered. Energy patterns that had flowed through the ship for centuries were suddenly interrupted. Emergency systems throughout the vessel began failing. Fleet Admiral, every officer on the bridge reported simultaneously, "The ship is experiencing critical system failures." Zixthanor looked at the tactical displays showing his fleet in complete disarray. Ships were out of formation, communications were disrupted, and his flagship was badly damaged. In 847 cycles of military service, he had never experienced anything like this. The humans had not defeated the Imperial fleet through superior technology or overwhelming firepower. They had won through sheer, desperate creativity and a complete refusal to fight according to any recognizable rules of warfare. For the first time in Imperial history, Fleet Admiral Zixthanor found Dr. Alex Turner had been studying the alien communication intercepts for hours when he discovered something that changed everything about humanity's understanding of their enemy. In his laboratory beneath Earth Command, surrounded by screens showing alien ship movements and communication patterns, Alex found the key to the Zephyrian Empire's greatest strength and most critical weakness. "Admiral Carter," Alex called urgently over the communication system. "I need to brief you immediately on what I've discovered about our enemies." Admiral Carter's voice came back strained with exhaustion. The battle had been raging for 18 hours, and human forces were taking heavy casualties despite their tactical successes. "Make it quick, Dr. Turner. We're barely holding our positions." "The Zephyrians aren't just coordinated," Alex explained rapidly. "They're a true hive mind species. Every individual is mentally connected to every other individual. They literally think as one massive collective consciousness." Admiral Carter paused her review of tactical reports. "What does that mean for our combat strategy?" "It means their greatest strength is also their greatest weakness," Alex continued. "They can coordinate perfectly because they all share the same thoughts. But that also means they can't adapt to truly individual decision-making. They've never faced an enemy where every soldier thinks differently." This revelation explained why the human kamikaze attacks and guerrilla tactics had been so effective. The Zephyrians couldn't predict human behavior because humans didn't think like a collective. Every human soldier made independent decisions, based on their own creativity and desperation. On the surface of Earth, Sergeant Lisa Brooks was proving Dr. Turner's theory correct. Her guerrilla forces had been fighting Imperial ground troops for 12 hours, and the aliens still couldn't develop effective counter-tactics. The Zephyrian soldiers were individually superior to humans in every measurable way. They were stronger, faster, and equipped with energy weapons that could cut through human armor like paper. But they couldn't understand an enemy that refused to fight logically. Lisa's forces used tactics that made no sense from a military efficiency standpoint. They would attack in one location, retreat immediately, then attack somewhere completely different using entirely different methods. They used their own casualties as psychological weapons, dragging wounded soldiers into positions where the aliens would have to see them. "Ground Commander Tolvex to Orbital Command," the alien leader reported in frustration. "Human resistance continues despite overwhelming tactical disadvantage. Their behavior patterns do not conform to any species profile in Imperial databases." "Explain their tactics," came the response from the orbital fleet. "They do not have tactics," Tolvex replied. "Each group fights differently. Some use explosive devices, others use kinetic weapons, some employ psychological warfare. There is no coordination, no overall strategy, no predictable pattern." What Tolvex didn't understand was that the lack of coordination was exactly the point. General Patricia Young had specifically ordered human ground forces to operate independently, making individual decisions based on local conditions. Meanwhile, in space, Captain Lucy Grant's stealth ship Vanguard had been conducting reconnaissance missions deep inside the Imperial Fleet formation. What she discovered supported Dr. Turner's theories about the alien hive mind. "Earth Command, this is Vanguard," Lucy reported from her hiding position near the damaged Imperial flagship. "I've been observing their command structure. They don't have individual ship commanders making independent decisions. Every action is coordinated through their collective consciousness." Admiral Carter saw the tactical implications immediately. "Captain Grant, if we could disrupt that collective consciousness, would it affect their entire fleet?" "More than that," Lucy replied. "If we could overload their shared mental network, it might incapacitate every Zephyrian in the fleet simultaneously." Lieutenant Eric Davis, who had been broadcasting human music into the alien communication system, reported new developments. "Admiral, the music is definitely affecting them, but I think we can do better. I've been analyzing their brainwave patterns, and I have an idea." "What kind of idea?" Admiral Carter asked. "Human laughter," Eric explained. "I've been monitoring Their reactions to different types of audio. They can handle aggression and violence because those emotions translate across species. But human laughter, especially the kind of chaotic, unpredictable laughter that comes from absurd situations, completely overloads their collective processing. Eric began broadcasting recordings of human comedy shows, stand-up routines, and spontaneous laughter from people in stressful situations. The effect on the Imperial fleet was immediate and severe. Zephyrian ships began losing formation control as their collective consciousness struggled to process the concept of finding humor in desperate circumstances. To a species that valued order and efficiency above all else, the human ability to laugh in the face of overwhelming odds was literally incomprehensible. Fleet Admiral, Communications Officer Velnara, reported in distress, "The hostile audio. Contamination is causing systematic breakdown in collective thought processes. Multiple ships are reporting cognitive dissonance among crew members." Fleet Admiral Zixthanor was experiencing something no Zephyrian commander had ever faced: individual thoughts that contradicted the collective consciousness. The human audio. Broadcasts were forcing his mind to consider concepts that didn't fit into Imperial worldview. How could a species laugh while facing extinction? How could soldiers sacrifice themselves without any logical tactical benefit? How could a civilization function when every individual made independent decisions? But while the Imperial fleet struggled with these philosophical questions, the humans were preparing their most audacious attack yet. General Young had been coordinating with space-based forces for a plan that violated every principle of sensible military strategy. "All ships, this is General Young," she broadcast to the remaining human fleet. "Execute Operation Longshot. I repeat, execute Operation Longshot." Operation Longshot was based on a simple observation. The Zephyrian ships were so large and heavily armored that conventional weapons couldn't penetrate their hulls. But the ships also had to be hollow inside to accommodate their crews and equipment. Captain Tony Blake, who had survived his squadron's kamikaze run by sheer luck, was leading the second phase of the operation. His remaining fighters were loaded, not with explosives, but with human soldiers wearing improvised spacesuits and carrying personal weapons. "Remember," Tony told his pilots, "we're not trying to destroy their ships from the outside. We're going to get inside and fight them in their own corridors." The concept of boarding enemy vessels during space combat was so obsolete that the Imperial fleet had no defenses against it. Their shields were designed to stop energy weapons and large projectiles, not individual soldiers flying through space. Tony's fighters punched through the alien shields and crashed directly into the crystalline hulls of Imperial ships. The impacts created breaches that human soldiers could enter. Within minutes, hand-to-hand combat was taking place inside alien vessels. The Zephyrian crew members had never experienced individual combat. Their collective consciousness meant they had always fought as a perfectly coordinated unit. Facing human soldiers who each fought with their own unique style and personal desperation was like being attacked by chaos itself. Corporal Andy Miller found himself fighting alien soldiers in a corridor that seemed to be grown rather than built. The walls pulsed with energy patterns, and the floor felt alive under his feet. But Andy had grown up in street fights before joining the military, and he understood something the aliens didn't. Sometimes the best strategy is no strategy at all. Andy fought with improvised weapons, changing tactics every few seconds, using his environment in ways the aliens couldn't predict. He turned emergency lights into blinding weapons, used gravity controls as traps, and employed psychological warfare by screaming at the top of his lungs while attacking. The Zephyrian soldiers, connected to their collective consciousness, experienced Andy's chaotic fighting style through their shared mental network. Every other alien soldier in the fleet felt the confusion and fear that Andy was creating in his individual opponents. Similar scenes were playing out on dozens of Imperial ships, as human soldiers brought individual combat into vessels designed for collective consciousness warfare. The psychological impact on the alien fleet was far greater than the physical damage being caused. Captain Lucy Grant, still observing from her stealth ship, reported the results. "Admiral Carter, their fleet coordination is completely breaking down. Individual ships are starting to operate independently and they don't seem to know how to handle it." Dr. Turner monitored the alien communications and confirmed what Lucy was seeing. Their collective consciousness is fragmenting under the stress of individual combat scenarios. For the first time in their species' history, Zephyrians are being forced to think as individuals. The Imperial fleet, which had conquered 10,147 worlds through perfect coordination and overwhelming technological superiority, was discovering that there were some enemies that couldn't be defeated through conventional warfare. Fleet Admiral Zix Thanor stood in the command center of his damaged flagship, experiencing something that no Zephyrian commander had ever faced in the Empire's 10,000-year history. For the first time since the Empire began its expansion, across the galaxy, an Imperial fleet was losing a battle. The tactical displays showed chaos that defied every principle of military science. Human ships moved in patterns that served no logical purpose. Human soldiers fought with weapons and tactics that violated basic efficiency protocols. Human communications contained sounds that disrupted Zephyrian collective consciousness. Fleet Admiral, Science Officer Kyle Varin reported, his usually composed voice carrying tones of distress. Collective consciousness coherence has degraded to 47% efficiency. Multiple ships are reporting crew members experiencing individual thought patterns. Individual thought patterns. In Zephyrian society, those words described a mental illness that required immediate medical intervention. The idea that entire crews were thinking as separate individuals was terrifying beyond measure. "How many ships have we lost?" Zix Thanor asked. Tactical Officer Morthek consulted his displays. 17 vessels destroyed, 43 ships reporting. Major systems damage and over 200 ships experiencing communication disruption with the collective. These losses were catastrophic. In previous conquest operations, the Imperial fleet typically lost no ships and suffered minimal damage. The technological superiority of the Empire usually made resistance impossible. But the humans weren't fighting with superior technology. They were fighting with something the Empire had never encountered: desperate creativity combined with complete disregard for military logic. Lieutenant Eric Davis continued his audio assault on the Imperial communication network. He had discovered that certain types of human emotional expression could completely overload Zephyrian mental processing. Laughter was effective, but he had found something even better: human crying. Not the organized grief that civilized species exhibited during formal mourning ceremonies, but the raw, uncontrolled sobbing of humans who refused to surrender despite hopeless circumstances. The sound of humans weeping while continuing to fight was incomprehensible to the Zephyrian collective consciousness. How can they continue fighting while expressing defeat? Science Officer Kil Varin asked, his form flickering between colors as he struggled to process the contradiction. Fleet Admiral Zix Thanor had no answer. According to every species profile in the Imperial database, emotional breakdown led to surrender. Humans seemed to fight harder when they were emotionally devastated. The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain Lucy Grant's stealth ship had been monitoring Imperial communications for hours, and she had learned enough about their language to understand their confusion. "Earth Command," Lucy reported. "I think I understand why they can't adapt to our tactics. They've only fought civilized species before. Every other race they conquered probably followed logical military doctrine." Admiral Carter was coordinating the defense of Earth's orbital platforms when Lucy's message came through. "Explain what you mean, Captain." "They expect enemies to surrender when resistance becomes illogical," Lucy continued. "But humans don't fight because it's logical. We fight because it's who we are." This insight was spreading through the human forces. Colonel Ryan Ford, coordinating ground defenses, issued new orders to all human military units. Stop trying to fight them efficiently. Start fighting them personally. The effect was immediate. Human soldiers stopped following standard military tactics and started fighting like humans had always fought throughout their history, with personal determination, individual creativity, and complete disregard for mathematical odds. Corporal. Mike Ross found himself alone in a damaged space station, facing 3 Zephyrian soldiers equipped with energy weapons that could cut through his armor effortlessly. According to military logic, he should surrender immediately. Instead, Mike grabbed a fire extinguisher and began fighting with the improvised weapon. He used the chemical spray to blind the aliens, employed the heavy cylinder as a club, and screamed insults that he knew they couldn't understand, but hoped would be psychologically disturbing. The 3 Zephyrian soldiers, connected to their collective consciousness, shared Mike's inexplicable determination with every other alien in their fleet. The experience of facing an enemy who fought harder as his situation became more hopeless spread through the Imperial forces like a mental virus. General Patricia Young had been planning humanity's most desperate gambit while the space battle raged above Earth. Working with engineers and scientists, she had identified the Imperial fleet's ultimate weakness. The Zephyrian ships were magnificent examples of advanced technology, but they were designed for fighting civilized enemies. Their crystalline hulls channeled energy efficiently, their communication systems maintained perfect coordination, and their defensive systems could stop any conventional weapon. But they had never been designed to handle an enemy that would deliberately crash a space station into their flagship. "Admiral Carter," General Young reported, "I have a plan that will either end this war or get us all killed. Probably both." Admiral Carter was monitoring reports from across the solar system. Human casualties were mounting, but the alien fleet was clearly struggling with something they had never experienced before. "What's your plan, General?" "We're going to ram their command ship with Luna Base." Luna Base was humanity's largest space installation, built into the moon's surface over 50 years of construction. It housed over 10,000 people and contained Earth's most advanced research facilities. "General," Admiral Carter said slowly, "Luna Base can't move. It's built into the moon." "Not the whole base," General Young explained. "Just the reactor section. We've been working on separating the fusion reactors from the main structure. If we can get them moving fast enough, we can create the largest kinetic weapon in human history." The plan was insane by any measure of military logic. It required evacuating Luna Base, separating critical systems from the moon's surface, and accelerating a massive chunk of technology and rock directly into the Imperial flagship. But insanity was exactly what had been working against the Zephyrian fleet. Captain Steve Murphy, whose submarine-launched missiles had been harassing the Imperial fleet from Earth's oceans volunteered to pilot the separated reactor section. General, I've been fighting these aliens from underwater for 2 days. I'd like to finish the job personally. The evacuation of Luna Base took 8 hours. Human engineers worked with desperate efficiency to separate the reactor complex from the main structure while the space battle continued around them. Families said goodbye to each other, knowing that most of them would never meet again. Captain Tony Blake led the fighter squadrons that would escort the reactor section on its final journey. His remaining pilots had already survived multiple suicide missions, and they understood that this would be their last flight. Remember, Tony told his pilots, we're not just fighting for Earth. We're showing the entire galaxy what happens when someone tries to conquer humanity. Fleet Admiral Zix Thanor detected the human activity around their moon, but the Imperial tactical computers couldn't classify what the humans were attempting. The movement patterns made no sense according to any known military doctrine. Fleet Admiral, Tactical Officer Morthek reported, the humans are engaging in large-scale construction activity on their satellite. Purpose unknown. Zix Thanor studied the tactical displays. The human space battle tactics had been unpredictable, but this level of activity suggested they were planning something unprecedented. Continue monitoring. Prepare defensive countermeasures for any new weapon systems. But when the Luna Base reactor section separated from the moon and began accelerating toward the Imperial flagship, there were no defensive countermeasures that could stop it. The Zephyrian energy weapons fired continuously, but the massive chunk of human engineering and lunar rock was too large and too well armored to destroy completely. Captain Steve Murphy, piloting the reactor section from its improvised command center, broadcast a final message to the Imperial fleet. This is Captain Steve Murphy of the Human Defense Forces. I want you to remember this moment. Remember what happens when you threaten our families, our freedom, and our future. The collision between the Luna Base reactor section and the Imperial flagship Eternal Order was visible from Earth's surface. The explosion created a new star in the night sky that burned for several minutes before fading. Fleet Admiral Zix Thanor died in that explosion, along with the command structure of the Imperial fleet. For the first time in their species' history, Zephyrian ships found themselves operating without collective consciousness coordination. The remaining Imperial vessels, deprived of their hive-mind leadership and traumatized by 24 hours of incomprehensible human warfare, began something that had never happened in Imperial military history. They began to retreat. Admiral Carter watched the alien ships changing course on her tactical displays. After a full day of desperate fighting, humanity had achieved the impossible. The mighty Zephyrian Empire, conqueror of 10,000 worlds, was running away from Earth. But the war wasn't over yet. As the Imperial fleet prepared to leave, the Admiral Lisa Carter stood in the command center of Earth Defense Command, watching the tactical displays show something that had never happened in the recorded history of the Zephyrian Empire. The Imperial fleet, beaten and broken, was retreating from a primitive world on the edge of the galaxy. The surviving alien ships limped away from Earth's solar system, their perfect formations destroyed, their collective consciousness shattered, and their reputation for invincibility gone forever. But Admiral Carter knew that this moment represented more than just a military victory. This was humanity's introduction to the galaxy, and she wanted to make sure the message was clear. Communications. Open a channel to the retreating Imperial fleet, Admiral Carter ordered. Lieutenant Amy Rogers, exhausted after 3 days of intercepting and translating alien communications, looked up from her station. Admiral, are you sure? They might interpret any communication as a request for negotiation. They're about to learn that humans don't negotiate with those who threaten our existence. Admiral Carter replied. "But they need to hear what we have to say before they leave." The communication channel opened, and Admiral Carter's voice was broadcast directly to every surviving ship in the Imperial fleet. Her words were automatically translated into Zephyrian language patterns and transmitted across their damaged communication network. "Attention, Zephyrian Empire. This is Admiral Lisa Carter, speaking for the people of Earth and the human species. You came to our world expecting easy conquest. You believed that superior technology guaranteed victory. You assumed that we would surrender like the other 10,147 species you have enslaved." Commander Jake Morrison, monitoring the alien fleet's reaction to the transmission, reported that Imperial ships were slowing their retreat to listen to the message. "You were wrong," Admiral Carter continued. "Not because our weapons were better than yours, not because our ships were faster, not because our technology was more advanced. You were wrong because you didn't understand what you were fighting." On the surviving Imperial ships, Zephyrian officers struggled to process the human communication. Without their collective consciousness operating at full efficiency, individual aliens were forced to think independently about concepts that challenged everything they understood about warfare and civilization. You have conquered species that valued order over freedom, efficiency over independence, survival over dignity. You have never encountered a species that would rather die fighting than live kneeling. You have never faced an enemy that becomes more dangerous when the situation becomes hopeless. Captain Lucy Grant, still monitoring Imperial communications from her stealth ship, reported that the alien vessels were broadcasting the human message throughout their fleet. They were analyzing every word, trying to understand the psychological factors that had led to their defeat. "Here is what you need to understand about humanity," Admiral Carter said, her voice carrying across the solar system to reach every alien ear. "We don't fight because we're certain we can win. We fight because some things are worth fighting for, regardless of the odds. We don't surrender because surrender is logical. We consider freedom more important than survival." Dr. Alex Turner, monitoring the alien psychological responses to the communication, reported unusual readings. "Admiral, their brainwave patterns are showing signs of genuine fear, not tactical concern about military defeat, but existential fear about encountering something they can't comprehend." Admiral Carter smiled grimly. Fear was exactly the emotion she wanted the aliens to experience. "We are sending this message, not just to your fleet, but to every species in your empire. We want them to know that resistance is possible. We want them to understand that the Empire can be defeated." The tactical implications of this statement rippled through the Imperial fleet. If other conquered species learned that the mighty Zephyrian Empire could be beaten by a primitive world, rebellions might break out across their territory. "But more importantly," Admiral Carter continued, "we want you to carry a warning to every other species in the galaxy, to those who might consider threatening Earth, to those who believe that humanity is weak because our technology is simpler, to anyone who thinks that humans will submit to alien rule." Captain Tony Blake, who had survived the Luna base collision and was leading cleanup operations in Earth orbit, listened to Admiral Carter's speech with pride. After 36 hours of desperate fighting, humanity was no longer just defending itself. They were announcing their presence to the galaxy. "The warning is simple," Admiral Carter said. "Earth is not a target. Earth is not a prize to be conquered. Earth is the home of a species that will never surrender, never submit, and never stop fighting for freedom. We will find any enemy that threatens us. We will hunt them across the galaxy if necessary. We will make them regret ever hearing the name human. Lieutenant Eric Davis, who had spent days disrupting alien communications with human music and laughter, began broadcasting Admiral Carter's speech on every frequency that could reach beyond the solar system. The message would travel at light speed to nearby star systems, carrying humanity's declaration across the local region of the galaxy. To the Zephyrian Empire specifically, Admiral Carter continued, you have two choices. You can continue your attempts to conquer and enslave other species, knowing that humanity will eventually find you and hold you accountable for your crimes. Or you can release the species you have enslaved and withdraw to your own territory. This ultimatum was unprecedented in Imperial history. No conquered species had ever made demands of the Empire. The concept of a primitive world threatening an advanced galactic civilization was incomprehensible to Zephyrian thinking. Choose wisely, Admiral Carter concluded, because the next time we meet, we'll be coming to your worlds instead of defending our own. The communication ended, leaving the Imperial fleet to consider humanity's message as they retreated toward the edge of the solar system. But Admiral Carter wasn't finished with her announcements. Open a general broadcast channel, she ordered. All frequencies, maximum power. I want this message to reach every corner of our galaxy. Amy Rogers configured the communication systems to broadcast on every possible frequency. The message would travel slowly, taking years or decades to reach distant star systems. But eventually, every advanced civilization in the galaxy would receive it. This is Admiral Lisa Carter of Earth, speaking for the human species. Today, humanity fought its first war against an alien empire. We were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing technology far beyond our current capabilities. By every logical measure, we should have been conquered within hours. Admiral Carter paused, looking at the tactical displays showing the debris from the battle. Thousands of humans had died defending their world, but their sacrifice had achieved something unprecedented. Instead, the Zephyrian Empire, conqueror of 10,847 worlds, has been forced to retreat from Earth, not because we were stronger, but because we were more determined. Not because our weapons were better, but because our spirit was unbreakable. The broadcast continued, carrying humanity's message into deep space where other civilizations might be listening. Admiral Carter wanted to make sure that Earth's first contact with the galaxy sent exactly the right message. To any species listening to this transmission, know that humanity offers friendship to those who come in peace and war to those who come as conquerors. We welcome trade, cultural exchange, and cooperation, but we will never accept subjugation. Captain Jake Morrison reported that long-range sensors were tracking the Imperial fleet as it left the solar system. The alien ships were broadcasting constantly, presumably reporting their defeat to Imperial command structures elsewhere in the galaxy. The galaxy is about to learn that there are species that cannot be conquered through force alone, Admiral Carter continued. Earth stands ready to assist any world that seeks freedom from oppression. We will share our knowledge, our determination, and our refusal to surrender with anyone willing to fight for their independence. Dr. Turner analyzed the psychological impact of Admiral Carter's broadcast. Admiral, this message will fundamentally change how other species view the possibility of resistance. We're not just announcing our presence. We're starting a revolution. Admiral Carter nodded. That was exactly what she intended. To the Zephyrian Empire, wherever you are listening, remember this day. Remember what happened when you threatened a species that values freedom more than survival. Tell every conquered world in your empire that Earth has shown resistance is possible. The final part of the broadcast was directed at Earth itself. After 3 days of desperate fighting, humanity had not only survived, but achieved something that would change the course of galactic history. Citizens of Earth, we have won more than a battle today. We have announced to the galaxy that humanity will never be conquered. We have shown that advanced technology cannot defeat an unbreakable spirit. And we have begun the process of bringing freedom to species that have forgotten what it means to be free. Admiral Carter looked out at the stars through the command center's main viewport. Somewhere out there, other species were receiving humanity's message. Some would see it as an opportunity for alliance. Others would view it as a threat to be eliminated.